Hello, everybody. My name is Tam, and I will be the host today. Welcome to the micro medical session for Girls in STEAM. Um, I'd just like to begin by gratefully acknowledging that Science World is located on the traditional and unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh village site of Sanok. So we're going to start today's session with a quick introduction from our amazing group of mentors. And I also do want to also highlight that Dawn will be our technician for today. Dawn will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any technical issues, Dawn would be happy to assist you. We also ask that you keep your comments in the chat and the question sections respectful and relevant to the topics being discussed today. Awesome. Awesome. If you have any questions for our mentors, feel free to put that in the chat at any point in time. And after our introductions, we're going to be doing a Q&A. We're going to go around and ask our mentors to do a brief introduction now. All right. So can I get each of you to let us know your name, your job title, and the thing you love most about your career? If we could start with Anna, that would be fantastic.
Sure thing. And so, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Anna. I'm a postdoctoral fellow researcher at the University of British Columbia. My research goes around studying the genomic basis of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in people living with HIV. What I like most about my work is that I get to work with a lot of different people all the time and collaborate in many different ideas. And I get the chance to travel quite often because I go to scientific conferences, which are not in Vancouver. So I often out of the country for work.
Very cool. That's an awesome perk about your job, collaborating from folks all over. Fantastic. Bronwyn, would you be able to introduce yourself, your job title, and what you love most about your career?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm Bronwyn. I am in my last year of my PhD at UBC in biochemistry, and I work with pathogens, bacterial pathogens that cause human disease, and trying to understand how these bacteria can cause disease and how we might be able to prevent them from causing disease. A perk that about my job, I was going to mention the traveling thing. That's a common one for academics. But I'll say that I get to work with some really cool instruments that involve like x-rays and huge microscopes that take up entire rooms that cost like $500 million. It's crazy, but yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting perspective. So yeah, thank you.
Whoa, those must be really, really big microscopes. Thanks so much for sharing that, Bronwyn. I'm sure, yeah, using all those different instruments must be a really cool, neat part of your job. And Paige, would you be able to introduce yourself, your career, job title, and what you love most about your job?
Absolutely. Thanks, Tam. My name's Paige. I'm a family doctor here in Vancouver. I think my favorite part of my job is the trust and communication and relationships I get to build with patients. I get to be a part of some pretty milestone events in their life, whether it's telling someone they're pregnant for the first time or telling them that their cancer is cured, or just that something that they were worried about is absolutely nothing to worry about at all. I get to be a part of people's milestones, and it's pretty special. I don't think many people get to do that every day.
Yeah, that must be really special to make those connections and follow up with your patients. That's amazing. Awesome. So, thank you, everyone. Thank you, mentors, for sharing your introduction and a little bit about your career. We can now move on to the questions and answer portion. So, if any of you have any burning questions for our wonderful mentors, feel free to pop those in the chat now. And we'll see where it takes us. So, it looks like we do not have any questions yet in the chat. So if you're still typing away, don't worry about that. What we're gonna do is I have a few questions for you, and then we'll see where that takes us. And then if anyone else has any questions, we will move on to that as well. So, my question for you is, how did you get started in your career? It's always interesting to know that. How did you get started in your career? Let's start backwards this time, Paige. How did you become a family physician?
So my mom's a family doctor as well. So I grew up with obviously her being a big mentor for me. She never pressured me to go into medicine. She just wanted me to be happy and do what I wanted to do with my life. But I saw how much joy it brought her and how much fulfillment it brought her as well. So that definitely was a seed planted from an early age. And then from there, I knew I loved biology. I knew I loved talking to people. I made the decision in high school to go to medical school in the UK, which is a bit different than what you can do in Canada. So I went to medical school when I was 17, and then from there it just sort of took off. But I knew pretty early, just from my passions of like science and learning from my mom, for sure.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that. I didn't know that you could start medical school at 17 in the UK. That's fantastic.
Not many people do, but it's a very different way to do it.
Amazing. We have a question from Julia. Julia is asking, how has COVID-19 affected your work? I'm not sure who might be able to answer this best. But raise your hand if you'd like to.
I can.
Everyone, let's go around. Let's go with Bronwyn first. Bronwyn, how has COVID affected your work?
So the university shut down March 16th. I remember the day very clearly. We got an email. It was a Monday. We got an email in the morning saying, don't come into work. And we didn't really have any idea what was sort of happening, when we would be going back to work. We were told 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks went by just working from home. So I was lucky that I had some data that I could work on from home. So just sort of processing data, writing manuscripts, things like that. And then 2 weeks turned into 3 months. I was pretty far into my PhD at the point. So I didn't go back to do COVID research because it was too far from my my thesis objectives. So I stayed away for 3 months, just working from home. I was being sent data to process and just continued through that. But a few people in my lab actually got pulled back early to do COVID research in my lab. And my lab is actually involved with producing some vaccines that are going on to phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials now. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, a similar experience. We thought 2 weeks, but here we are. I know, Anna, you also wanted to share something about how COVID has affected your work as well.
Yeah, I think in my case, actually, this would sound weird, but it was a positive thing for me because most of my work is working with data. I work in the computer. Because I work in the hospital, we have access to patient data that we could analyze. So we actually got quite a few publications from COVID, even though I was working from home. But I did notice that many of our PhD and master students were struggling with trying to just progress with their work and their projects. But yeah, for me, I had mixed feelings. I didn't like to be alone at home. However, I got the chance to just publish more work, to do more things, and have like a larger repertoire of papers that I could then show to the community.
Thanks for sharing that, Anna. Yeah, it's transitioning from being in person for most of the time to working from home and researching from home must have been a big change for many folks. And Dr. Page, there's actually a specific question for you. How hard is it when you have to tell a family something sad or deal with something sad? And as well as I'm sure you'd like to touch upon anything COVID related that may have changed or affected your job.
Yeah, I'll kind of link those two questions together actually, because it's very pertinent in today's day and age, obviously. As a family doctor, the biggest change for me was moving every patient I saw every day was in the office in front of me to the vast majority of appointments being via telephone call. And like non-verbal cues and body language is such a big thing when it comes to breaking bad news, as we call it in medical school, where we everyone just wants to have some answers. And lots of times I mentioned milestones with patients, whether that's good news, but lots of times that's bad news as well. And verbal cues and body language, whether it be giving them a hug or holding their hand, breaking bad news, we lost that in COVID. It's very difficult to tell someone that they have cancer, for example, over the telephone, but that's what we've had to start doing. So that was a big transition for me, which something that I really, really struggled with was I lost that in office face-to-face contact with patients, which was very difficult. And I don't think anyone says that they prefer the telephone to in-office appointments still. So it's, there's no ideal way to break bad news to someone, but it's something that we have to deal with every day, unfortunately. And how do I deal with something sad? It's still something that I'm learning with every day, whether it be talking to my friends and family or colleagues, or just getting outside and going for a walk, just to sort of debrief myself, because it is hard to carry like sad news around with you for the rest of the day, for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Paige. I'm sure things can be difficult, and losing that in-person interaction makes things more difficult. Thank you so much for sharing that. The next question, these two questions actually are a little bit related. What careers did you think you would follow when you were in high school? I know, Paige, you said that you've always wanted to work in medical, but did anyone else think differently? Like, what kind of careers were you thinking in high school? And did you know from the start what career you wanted to do, or what inspired you to follow this path? How about Anna? Did you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I can relate to all these questions.
yeah.
So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was at the end of high school, but I knew what I didn't like. So that helped me to focus on the things that I was good at. So I did like biology a lot. So I went to do my undergrad in biotechnology back on my home country. I'm originally from Panama. And while I was there, I had different options that I could follow. So what I do in order to define more or less what I wanted to do was to just try to volunteer in different institutions. So I volunteer in um, in vitro fertilization clinic, for example. I volunteer in an Smithsonian Institute, which is an institute that works studying the evolutionary history of animals that are in my country. So yeah, I took all these opportunities and tried to figure out what I like it the most. And I figured out I like a lot working with computers, and I like a lot working with genomic information and trying to figure out the basis of why we are the way we are, for example. And that's the way it worked for me. And from there, I just took every step just to follow those sort of things that I knew I was good at and that I knew it would fulfill me every day. And I'm happy I did it that way because I don't get bored at all. Like that's something that made me very happy. I know there's people that sometimes do one decision, they might not be as happy as I am. Like I'm very happy with my work. I don't get boring. Every day we have ideas that are different. And because I work with a lot of different fields and people from all these fields, I also feel like I'm contributing to something bigger than me and bigger than everybody. So I love that very much. So I hope that could help with this question.
Thanks for sharing that, Anna. Yeah, that's amazing that you got to experience different opportunities and kind of figure out what you did love. So that's fantastic. How about you, Bronwyn? What careers did you think you would follow in high school? Were they different or the same? Or
Yeah.
did you know from the start what you wanted to do?
Yeah, like sort of exactly the same as Anna. Just like following things that I'm interested in. I in high school actually was really interested in journalism, but I ended up like really also enjoying biology and chemistry. And I had a really big interest in genetics. Um, and then I went into university in a molecular biology and genetics program in Ontario at the University of Guelph. And I realized very quickly that I didn't like genetics in first year. But in university, like you don't have to, it's not like a set course when you pick and you start and you have to follow that path, you can change very easily. So I had some experiences in my first year in biochemistry, and I was like, this kind of sounds interesting to me. Maybe I'll pursue that. So I switched to biochemistry for my second year, and I found that I loved it. Still had to do some genetics, but less genetics than straight genetics program. And I followed that, and I also uh, grew my love of journalism and worked in some magazines at the university, writing papers and doing reports. So I also followed that path as well. And then when I got to my fourth year of my undergrad, you usually do a what's called an honors thesis. So you spend a research term in a lab within your department and get some hands-on experience. And I really enjoyed working there. Also got to do some writing on manuscripts and contribute towards that. And so I was sort of bringing together all of my interests into one sort of career, realizing that academia and science envelops a lot of different of my different interests. So yeah, that's sort of how I got to where I am.
So sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So sorry about that, everyone. I was just saying thank you, Bronwyn, for sharing that. Thank you so much. This next question is I know you're all talking a little bit about how you got to where you are, but if you could give yourself, your past self, some sort of advice, what sort of advice would you give yourself? Paige, would you like to start off?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think because I knew from pretty early on, compared to the average physician in Canada, that I knew I wanted to do medicine. And the route that I took was quite unconventional compared to the average physician. I think I would tell myself to relax a little. I went a bit overboard with extracurriculars and trying to be top of my class and volunteering, that there's some times where I feel like I didn't really experience high school like I should have. So I think I was go from the get-go, and obviously it worked out, and I'm thrilled with what I'm doing at the moment. But I think if I stopped and smelled the roses a bit more in high school, that would have been very beneficial for me. But again, it's easier in hindsight because I was happy in high school. I love being busy, and I'm still busy today. But that's probably what I'd say. Relax a little bit, Paige.
Great advice, Paige. Thanks so much. And what kind of advice would you give your past self, Bronwyn?
Yeah, like sort of the same thing. I was also like go and like overcommitting myself to try to make sure that I was getting all of the experiences. Yeah, like slow down. Like there's time for everything. So yeah.
Yeah,
I have to say that I agree. Actually, I was going to say the same thing. Like sometimes I felt like I was rushing through things and I didn't enjoy every step of the way. And I know it was like very good. I just didn't have the mind to enjoy every moment. So yeah, I will say to myself, calm down, things will be okay. You just have to enjoy the moment and that will be fine.
that's amazing. Thank you, all three of you, for sharing that wonderful advice. I also can agree that, yeah, slowing down and appreciating the moment is something that we can all do. Um, we're almost out of time now, but we do have one last question. Dr. Page, awesome one, asked, do you ever feel weighed down by bad news?
Absolutely. There's no way not to. It's something that I personally need to work on, is how much I carry it around with me, because it's not fair for the rest of the patients that I see in the day to not get my best self if I'm kind of weighed down by someone that I saw in the morning. But it's a very difficult balance to find. As a family doctor, you need to give your everything to every patient, which is difficult to do, let alone when you're telling someone some very difficult news. So yeah, like I said, always a big thing in medical school and residency is coping mechanisms and healthy coping mechanisms, just to get through the stress of day-to-day life as being a physician, let alone in a pandemic, which is, I'm 3.5 years into practice, and 1.5 of those years have been COVID-19. So absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that, Paige. And I don't want to leave the two of you hanging, so feel free to jump in on anything related to do with like coping with stress or bad news. Feel free to share that before we end our session.
I'll just say, like, with like research and stuff, it can get like pretty discouraging when you spend often months of negative results. Yeah, so like definitely finding some ways to de-stress are really important for really any career. But yeah, in science, like there can be months, sometimes years, where you're not getting the results that you need, and there's a lot of people that are putting pressure on you. So yeah, definitely developing good coping mechanisms and stress relief early on is really important in any career.
Yeah. I can add that even though you do the work and you get results and you write your manuscript and you give it to other people, you might get rejection, and that will make you feel bad. The truth is, there is nothing wrong with you. They are just trying to help you make your work better. And that's the way I cope with those rejections, sort of rejections that I get. So yeah, it's hard, but it's something like I have to learn to cope with. So what I do is to exercise and cook. That's my to-go activities when I feel down about it.
That's amazing. You're all such strong women. Thank you so much for your time in joining us today. Let's give a big thanks to our mentors for sharing such an inspiring session with us. Yeah, thank you so much, all of you.
Thanks.
So now we are finishing up our last session for today. So if you could please return to the mainstream in our lobby for all of our closing announcements, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Louise.